has absolutely nothing to do with free trade or markets. It's an anti-market, monopolistic rule there to shore up the protectionist powers, monopoly powers of the pharmaceutical industry. And as Daison indicates, the issue is much broader than cancer. We've been fighting this trade agreement for 5 years because the intellectual property chapter contains dozens of pages of rules that would preclude access to HIV treatment, to heart disease treatment, to a number of other treatments that people need across the region in myriad ways. And it's completely unacceptable, and it's unacceptable that it's being negotiated in secret right now as we speak here on the street, and we can't be a part of that conversation. Next up, I'd like to indicate some experts that we have in the audience too, for journalists that are interested to talk to folks after. We have Judith Ruiz from Doctors Without Borders, can speak to some of the negotiation dynamics and technical aspects of the rules. And we have some particular handouts on the 5+3 nuttiness we'll discuss approximately. But I'd like to introduce another cancer thriver from Knowledge Ecology International and an issue expert, Manon Rex.
Thank you. So my name is Manon Rex, and I work for a non-profit in Washington, D.C. named KEI. And today I'm here on behalf of the Union for Affordable Care Cancer Treatment Group, which is a volunteer group of people affected by cancer. If we were to do a quick survey of how many people here are affected by cancer, whether through a parent, a relative, a friend, or yourself, I would bet about 70%. And that's pretty much the people that I'd like to talk about. I'm the granddaughter and the daughter and the sister of a cancer patient, and I'm also, since 2010, a cancer patient. I'm alive and well today thanks to a very new kind of drug, a biologic, that instead of destroying all my cells, is destroying only the cancer cells. So I'm all about new drugs. I'm all about the best drugs because I have no alternative. There's no Tylenol versus aspirin. It's this drug or nothing for me. It's about $5,000 a week. And yeah, I'm not paying for it. I have an insurance. But my insurance is raising the price of your insurance to pay for me. So we all pay for it at the end. UAC, the group, UAC, the Union for Affordable Cancer Treatment, is focusing on one side effect of cancer treatment, which is the financial toxicity of cancer treatment. The financial toxicity is huge in the U.S. and in all the countries involved in the TPP and beyond. Today I would like to make only three very short points that affect cancer patients. The TPP, for example, requires monopoly on data to register new drugs. And this is not the case in all the countries involved in the TPP, and it's certainly not required by the WTO. We also have concern about the language on exception to the new right on data. The TPP requires the grant to patent on new use of older drugs, and that extends the patent monopoly past 20 years, which is also an obstacle. The TPP makes it more difficult to register biosimilars by gutting U.S. law that lower damages if there's an infringement, if there's not enough disclosure. Basically, it's going to prevent competition. It's going to prevent more access at affordable prices. So today, my government, your government, our governments have a choice. Instead of negotiating policy that will restrict access by increasing prices of drugs, they can actually keep the weapons they have right now, such as compulsory license and other ways to regulate the price of drugs. They could actually negotiate how to increase public funding of new drugs and create better innovation for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Menno. So why is all this happening? The answer is very simple. It's the lobbying power of the pharmaceutical industry, which spends an astronomical amount of money in Washington, D.C. every year. Access to medicines around the world depends in large part on generic competition. Generic competition has consistently proven the most effective means of reducing pharmaceutical prices and keeping them, bringing them down further over time. This trade agreement would get in the way of that life-saving process. Now, the heartening news is that for for years, for 5 years now, most countries in this negotiation have been resisting the demands put forward by the pharmaceutical industry, effectively via the U.S. Trade Representative. There has been a solid block of countries saying no to this rule and many other rules that would restrict access to medicines. And so we're calling on those countries today to stay strong in this stage of negotiations, stay strong against the U.S. proposal. One of the most cynical moves that we've seen in this entire process has been to rebrand the 8 years that we cannot afford to wait, the 8-year monopolies, with a trick, a sleight of hand. It's a turd dressed up in a nice little suit and tie. The aim now, supposedly, in order to help countries that have drawn a red line and said they won't go any further than 5 years, there is a proposal being floated that would say, okay, you can write 5 years into your law, but you have to find another alternative mechanism to block competition for an additional 3 years, perhaps through something called post-marketing surveillance. So we did the math on this and determined, with all the sort of powerful brains that we have on our side, that 5 plus 3 still equals 8. And that it's still an 8-year monopoly, and it's still going to lead to preventable suffering and death, and that's completely unacceptable. We're confident that negotiators from many countries here, whose people depends on these access to medicines, are not going to fall for this absurd trick. Finally, I'd like to introduce Melinda St. Louis of Public Citizens Global Trade Watch.
I want to just bring into this space the fact that there is, at this time, a Twitter storm happening in all of the TPP countries from 12 to 1 at this particular time, tweeting about no TPP death sentence. We can't wait 8 years to all of the trade ministries. They are receiving, so it is not just those of us who are here, but there are thousands of people around the globe that are participating and have been participating for years in saying we can't wait 8 years, we can't wait 7 years, we can't wait 6 years, we cannot allow the death sentence clause to continue. And am going to read a statement on behalf of Breast Cancer Action. They wanted to be here, but they were not able to, and they asked me to read a statement from them. They say, at first glance, a huge international trade deal seems far removed from the fear and urgency of a new breast cancer diagnosis. But as the executive director of Breast Cancer Action, I am acutely aware of how the highly contested Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, threatens the health and well-being of women, including breast cancer patients. As the head of a watchdog organization for the breast cancer movement, I work to ensure that the public health and patient interests come before those of big business. And I say no way to secret trade deals that limit access to life-saving medicine and treatment. By requiring all participating countries in the TPP to enact automatic market exclusivity periods on many essential